Hey guys, so you might notice that my microphone sounds a little different. I'm not actually at home right now, um, but that's fine. I'm recording this video from a computer, and I just wanted to let you know that for patch 7.1, I've gone ahead and released all the updates. All of them are out. All profiles have been touched, and now all of the specs are implemented to every single profile. So I wanted to go over a few things that I've changed. And I've also wanted to discuss a few things that are coming. So the first thing I want to tell you, I mentioned it in the Paladin video, but in every single one of the profiles, there is now a toggle on the top left. The way that works is that you can click the icon for the corresponding spec, whatever it might be. In some cases, I had to use different icons because the spec icons weren't available. You click the icon, right-click it, and then you set the opacity to 0. There's instructions underneath as well in text. You do that, and what will happen is the profile will be turned off. Not completely, as in you can still see it in edit mode, but when you go out of edit mode and you're actually playing, you won't be able to see anything. It's completely hidden. I've set up group conditions so that they rely on those toggles being shown. So if you ever want to turn them off and on, that's what you do. Just right-click the icon in the top left corner, set the opacity to 0, and it'll say hidden, and then the profile won't show. If you want to disable the profile, as in you want to make your own, you'll have to go into the group settings and just remove the spec from each of the groups that have it. So, for example, if you wanted the Enhancement Shaman one turned off, like you would just go into the group settings for all of these enhancement icons, and just on the group settings page, you'll see the 3 specs that are available, with the enhancement spec having a tick box. Just untick it and it won't show. It'll completely disappear. But yeah, so that's all there. For new people who haven't used these profiles, there is a chain icon which is used as an anchor. All groups are anchored to it, and you can just go ahead and drag that anchor around, and it'll make it so it's easier to position the groups if you ever want to move their positioning around. And finally, I went ahead and made it so that you can see the version and when I updated, as in the profile. When you go into edit mode, you'll see on the top left what the version number is, whether it's 1.1, 1.2. It'll be like version 2 if I do major changes. But it'll say the patch version, it'll say the profile version, and it'll also say the date I updated it. I'll keep that updated. So that'll be just an easier way for you to go ahead and know that you have the latest version, and you can go ahead and track it versus what is said online. I will go ahead and keep posting on Twitter every time I put an update out. Anytime I make any fix, whatever it might be, I'll go ahead and post on Twitter saying I made a fix to this spec, and I'll leave a link to the profile. But what I've also done is I've made it so that all the links now have a consolidated link system. So if you ever want to get the latest version of a profile, you can now just go ahead and bookmark a single page. So the way that links will work is they are all going to have a rebrand.ly link, and they're going to say rebrand.ly / the class name TMW. So, for example, Death Knight, all one word, would be rebrand.ly / Death Knight TMW. Demon Hunter would be Demon Hunter TMW. Mage would be Mage TMW. So you can just change the class and put TMW after it, and you'll always be redirected to the latest version. I can always backlog older versions if needed, and if you ever wanted to maintain older versions, if there's something you like, I would recommend saving whatever version you like in a notepad on your own computer. That way you can import groups as you like. I'll be making a advanced guide that shows how to import specific groups, so you don't have to update the entire profile. And I'll also be talking about meta icons, which I don't use that much, but I'll bring them up, and I'll talk about other conditions and things like that. Some of the cooler things you can do with Tell Me When. And I'm also going to be making a short guide on the differences on Tell Me When and Weak Auras, so that you can get a better idea of why I use one versus the other, and just to sort out that discussion. Another thing I want to do while I have the attention is just address some of the comments I get. Like, there's a few comments I get very consistently. The first one being, why would you use something like this? Why don't you just play the game? To that I say, it's this add-on, and what it does is no different than bigwigs, deadly boss mods, or any other add-on like weak auras that tells you information that you don't have readily available to you in game. It might look like it's telling you exactly how to play, but there's a limit to what it can actually do. There's going to always be a little bit of player skill involved. You're going to need to be able to make judgment calls and when to know not to go into the rotation. Like here, for example, I'm not going to follow the rotation. I'm going to crash lightning instantly. I'm going to get into storm strike mode. I'm not even going to rebuff my buffs because it's not as important. I need to crash lightning and spam. So knowing those judgment calls, knowing when to make them, knowing how to AoE, because this isn't an AoE profile, these are single target, knowing how to AoE, those are things that as a player you're going to have to learn. What these profiles are meant to do is kind of give you the basics so you can get started on whether, maybe it's an alt or maybe it's a class that you've been playing for a long time but you've been playing incorrectly or you haven't figured out how to time things. It serves that purpose to get you a foothold so you can get a better idea of how to improve your performance. Another big question I get asked a lot is, why do I do this and tell me when versus weak auras? The simplest answer, and I'll go over this when I do the weak auras versus tell me when guide, the simplest answer is that there are built-in features in tell me when that are absent in weak auras. To give the most basic explanation, weak auras lacks inverse conditions. And while you might say, oh, well, no, you can inverse things. What I mean is, weak auras is set up in such a way that you can set up an icon to meet conditions. You cannot set it to have two sets of conditions. You cannot say either this condition, like for example, let's say spell cooldown. You can set a spell cooldown and either the spell cooldown is ready, and the icon will show. In Tell Me When, you can say, okay, if the spell icon is not ready, do this instead. In weak auras, you would have to make another icon, which is a duplicate, but with inverted conditions. And because of that, it makes doing a rotation incredibly difficult, because a single icon like the Crash Lightning you see there, it's not just tracking, is Crash Lightning ready? That's one condition. It's also tracking your Maelstrom. But then it goes on and it's like, alright, are all the conditions for Storm Strike met? Are all the conditions for Lava Lash met? It checks all the conditions across the board. And for the rotation, there's like 10 other icons it's checking. If I was to do it in weak auras, I would have to make every single condition again for every icon. I would have to say, if for me to cast Storm Strike, I would have to put in all the conditions for all the other spells to fail before I could say, show this icon. And on top of that, I would have to make, for all the other icons, the same sort of conditions, including Storm Strike's conditions to fail. It's a lot of extra work, and the easiest way to do it would be Lua code. But I use Tell Me When because it's an easier thing to update, it's faster. I can make a lot of these profiles. It might look like I take a ton of time making them, and for me, what would take 2 hours or 3 hours, in Rogue's case, a few hours, would take a normal person a long, long time in Lua code to debug and update and all these things. And that's why a lot of these add-ons aren't so quick to get to the newer profiles. So that's why I use Tell Me When. Another thing is, another common question I get asked is, if I don't have the character at 110, why do I make profiles for them? And the simplest answer for that is just that, because I can read, I can talk to people, I have people who I raid with and people I can communicate with. I have information from Simcraft, Warcraft logs, and all this other information that I can compile, and I can get an idea of how a class plays. And then I can translate that information into an add-on. And there are a lot of people who play the game but don't know how to process this information. You could tell someone the rotation 10 times over, but they won't understand why. So a lot of times it's easier just to make a profile that says, hey, this is what you're supposed to cast. And if they ask why you have to cast it, then you have the opportunity to explain it to them. But if you just gave someone a rotation, if you just wrote it on a website and they read through it, not everyone can process that information and get it and keep it on the top of their head at all times. So this is supposed to alleviate a lot of that stress. It's supposed to take the information as I read it and as I'm informed, and put it into a visual form so that if you did the reading, and you understand why the icons are being shown as they are, then it goes hand in hand. You understand why you're being told to cast something, and it makes it easier for you to process and say, okay, online I read that I'm supposed to do Boulder Fist to keep up this buff, and also when I'm low on Maelstrom. You see Boulder Fist pop up when the buff gets low. You also see Boulder Fist come up when Maelstrom's low. So you know, okay, well, this is a visual representation of what I was told to do, and you go from there. I'm not always right. In fact, a lot of the times I'm wrong, or I make small mistakes, but it's a process, and usually within the first, I would say, week, sometimes 2 weeks of putting out a profile, I have it ironed out. I recently just made changes to the Rogue one. I made some updates to the Rogue profile, and I recently just made some updates to it because there were some inherent bugs that through my testing didn't really occur, but after people who play the Rogue a lot more than I do tested it, they found them. I was able to correct them. I changed the way that the counter system works for Roll the Bones and things like that, and it's all things that I work on in chunks, and I put out profile updates when I can. There's still a few things I still have to add to some profiles, but it's all a process. And so when it comes to classes I don't play, I take a lot of the feedback and criticism I get from online, and I put it into the profiles. Most of the profiles are where they're at right now because of the people who use them, and they know more about the classes than I do, but at least I can get a start somewhere, and then we can finish it off together. But yeah, so those are just the three most common questions I get asked, aside from how do I import this. That's a separate thing altogether. But the last thing I want to talk about is where we're going to go as we're going into 7.2. 7.2 is going to come out, I'm going to ballpark January, February, somewhere there, probably late January if I had to say earliest. So I intend to keep these updated to all the way through patch 7.1 and this patch 7.1.5, because that's going to be another thing altogether. So whatever the next major raid and major changes, whenever they come, I'll have this updated throughout the thing. I may not put major updates out. A lot of them are just going to be bug fixes and things, so the speed at which they come out and how will really just depend on how big of a bug it is. If there's a really minor thing, like I just updated the enhancement one because people wanted Flame Tongue and Frostbrand trackers. I don't particularly need them, but I put them in. So things like that may be slower to come out depending on what I'm doing, especially with classes I don't play as often. But if I do notice that there is something I can quickly add in or things like that, they'll come out very quickly. Other than that, what you'll see are smaller fixes throughout the expansion, smaller fixes and things like that, and no major updates will really be made until the next major content patch, at which point I'll go over all the profiles again, because if they make changes to values, I'll need to change that, and I'll make those changes. But yeah, so all I wanted to say was everything's out. I'll keep things updated to the best of my ability, and I'll keep making content. I'm going to be streaming a lot more. Obviously not this week because I'm not at home, but I'm going to be streaming a lot more. So if you want to talk, or if you want to, say, a lot of people have just been saying thank you, and that's another thing I want to say. I want to thank everybody who sent tips and donations on the stream. I never ask for that kind of stuff, but I do appreciate it. It's good to see that people are enjoying the things that I'm putting out, and I thank everybody who donated. There was like 6 or 7 of you in just the last week, so thank you very much for that. But yeah, if you want to come hang out on stream, if you want to chat, if you notice there's a bug, add me to Battle.net, give me a PM on Twitter, on MMO Champion, on stream. You can come and talk to me live, and I can. I've already done it a couple times. I can fix some of these bugs while I'm streaming. Some of them are really quick. I can quickly log on a character, and it's easier that way as well because I get the feedback and I can say, is this what's wrong? Is this what's wrong? So yeah, feel free to pop on in. But that's it for this video. I just wanted to go over a few things that are going to be coming up and just explain some of the new features. I'll leave a link to every single profile in the description below, and you can feel free to bookmark any of those links for your favorite classes or all the classes if you'd like. And I've also put up a Reddit post with all this information. But yeah, I hope you guys like what you see. I hope you guys like what I'm going to keep putting out there. And I'll catch you in the next video. Catch you later.